I'm Jen from That Mama Book Nook, and welcome back to my channel. Today I want to react to the Goodreads Choice Awards historical fiction nominees and how they compare to my predictions. I forget if I said this in my original prediction video, which I will link here and down below in the description, but the Goodreads Choice Awards doesn't really mean that much. There's no real prize except for extra hype for these books, many of which were already popular, so didn't necessarily even need the extra hype. And there are many people that are sick of Goodreads Choice Awards content, don't care for the Goodreads Choice Awards at all, and I totally respect that. That's totally fine. I enjoy this time of year because I like that everyone is talking about the same books at the same time. It's just a lot of fun to have that community dialogue that isn't just centered around the new releases. So I do enjoy the content that comes out this time, but if it's not for you, no hard feelings. So on to the nominees. In the historical fiction genre category, I accurately predicted 11 of the books that did end up being nominated. Plus, there were an additional 2 books from my honorable mentions that ended up being in the nominees. So kind of 13 that I predicted somewhat accurately. Then there were 2 other books that I predicted that were put into different categories, which I know I did talk about could happen. The first was The Buffalo Hunter by Stephen Graham Jones. This went into the horror category, and in retrospect that totally makes sense. The other one was The Names by Florence Knapp. This went into the general fiction category. This one I feel a little bit more wishy-washy about. I feel like it could have been historical fiction, but if you go and look at Goodreads and look at the genres that people have placed it in, they do pick fiction first, so I'll give it to them. Then I had 7 books that I just did not predict accurately at all. So I'm going to go through those ones first, and then I'll swing back around to the 13 that I did predict. First up is The Amalfi Curse by Sarah Penner. This book has a 3.84 star rating on Goodreads with 36,742 total ratings. This book is 100% on my radar. I clearly have a copy of it. This is a fantasy book. It is listed as fantasy first on Goodreads, and I never would have pegged this as a historical fiction. So I don't give myself too much flack for not predicting this one accurately. I haven't read it yet, so I could be wrong, but that's my gut feelings about it. This book is about Haven Ambrose, a trailblazing nautical archaeologist who has come to the sun-soaked village of Positano to investigate the mysterious shipwrecks on the Amalfi coast. But Haven is hoping to find more than old artifacts beneath the azure waters. She is secretly on a quest to locate a trove of priceless gemstones her late father spotted on his final dive. Upon Haven's arrival, strange maelstroms and misfortunes start plaguing the town. Is it nature or something more sinister at work? As Haven searches for her father's sunken treasure, she begins to unearth a centuries-old tale of ancient sorcery and one woman's quest to save her lover and her village by using the legendary art of Stragaria, a magical ability to harness the ocean. Could this magic be behind Positano's latest calamities? Haven must unravel the Amalfi Curse before the region is destroyed forever. Of note, Positano is one of my absolute favorite places in the world, so I am excited to read this, but again, it just feels like a little bit of a disservice to historical fiction to put a fantasy rollover into this category. Feels like fantasy, romantasy, all those categories have so many options that they're like, well, we'll just throw this one in here. So again, that's my thoughts without reading it. Let me know if you agree or not. Next, I did not predict Amity by Nathan Harris. This has a 3.86 rating on Goodreads with only 1,387 ratings. This is very low compared to other books that were nominated, so I was a bit surprised, but after reading the synopsis, it does sound good, so maybe it does deserve more hype. And I feel like since the nomination came out, I now have started to hear from other friends who read historical fiction that they have read it and enjoyed it. So again, maybe it deserves the nomination and a little more hype than it has on Goodreads at the moment. New Orleans, 1866. The Civil War might be over, but formerly enslaved Coleman and June have yet to find the freedom they've been promised. 2 years ago, the siblings were separated when their old master, Mr. Harper, took June away to Mexico, where he hoped to escape the new reality of the post-war South. Coleman stayed behind in Louisiana to serve the Harper family, clinging to the hope that one day June would return. When an unexpected letter from Mr. Harper arrives, summoning Coleman to Mexico, Coleman thinks that finally his prayers have been answered. What Coleman cannot know is the tangled truths of June's tribulations under Mr. Harper out on the frontier. And when disaster strikes Coleman's journey, he is forced on the run with Mr. Harper's daughter, Florence. Together, they venture into the Mexican desert to find June, all while evading two crooked brothers who will stop at nothing to capture Florence and Coleman and collect the money they're owed. As Coleman and June separately navigate a perilous, parched landscape, the siblings learn quickly that freedom isn't always given. Sometimes it must be taken by force. The next one that I did not predict, I'm a little bit frustrated about. That is The Hounding by Zenobie Purvis. This has a 3.69 star rating on Goodreads with 8,325 ratings. This one I have heard of. I have zero interest in reading it. Historical fiction technically is listed first, but from the description it wouldn't be my first pick for the main genre. Even before the rumors about the Mansfield girls begin, Little Nettlebed is a village steeped in the uncanny. From strange creatures that wash up on the riverbed to portentous ravens gathering up on the roofs of people about to die. But when the villagers start to hear barking and one claims to see the Mansfield sisters transform before his very eyes, the allegations spark fascination and fear like nothing has before. The truth is that though the inhabitants of Little Nettlebed have never much liked the Mansfield girls, a little odd, think some, a little high on themselves perhaps, they've always had plenty to say about them. As the rotating perspectives of 5 villagers make clear, now is no exception. Even if local belief in witchcraft is waning, an aversion to differences is as widespread as ever. And these conflicting narratives point to the same conclusion. Something isn't right in Little Nettlebed, and the sisters will be the one to pay for it. What? Maybe I need to be more open-minded, but people thinking that there are girls turning into dogs is not grabbing me. Then the next one that I did not predict is 100% on my radar, but I just had no idea it was historical fiction, and even looking through the synopsis and the reviews and the genres, I couldn't even figure out what time period this actually takes place to consider it historical, but I believe it. I just had no idea. And that is The Bright Years by Sarah Damoff. This has a 4.22 star rating on Goodreads with 47,167 ratings. Well deserved to be on there. Again, I just had no idea. It wasn't obvious. Ryan and Lillian Bright are deeply in love, recently married, and now parents to a baby girl, Georgette. But Lillian has a son that she hasn't told Ryan about, and Ryan has an alcohol addiction he hasn't told Lillian about. So Georgette comes of age watching her parents' marriage rise and fall. When a shocking blow shatters their fragile trio, Georgette tries to distance herself from reminders of her parents. Years later, Lillian's son comes searching for his birth family, so Georgette must return to her roots, unearth her family's history, and decide whether she can open up to love for them or herself while there's still time. As I said, I couldn't really figure out what time period this was from, but I did see something that said it spanned the course of 60 years. So I just hope it spends enough time in the past to count as historical fiction, because right now I'm considering this more general fiction, but hey, I'm not Goodreads. Next one I did not predict is Strangers in Time by David Baldacci. This has a 4.18 star rating on Goodreads with 35,419 ratings. I have heard of this author. I have never read anything by this author, and I just didn't know that he did historical fiction. I thought it was more mystery thriller, but this one does take place in 1944, so my bad. 14-year-old Charlie Matters is up to no good, but for a very good reason. Without parents, peerage, or merit, ducking school but barred from work, he steals what he needs, living day to day until he's old enough to enlist to fight the Germans. After barely surviving the Blitz, Charlie knows there's no telling when a falling bomb might end his life. 15-year-old Molly Wakefield has just returned to an almost unrecognizable London, one of millions of people to be evacuated to the countryside via Operation Pied Piper. Molly has been away from her parents, her home, for nearly 5 years. Her return, however, is not the homecoming she had hoped for, as she's confronted by a devastating reality. Both her parents are gone. Without guardians and stability, Charlie and Molly find an unexpected ally in Ignatius Oliver and solace at his bookshop, The Bookkeep, where a book a day keeps the bombs away. Mourning the recent loss of his wife, Ignatius forms a kinship with both children and in each other. Over the course of the greatest armed conflict the world has ever seen, they rediscover the spirit of family each has lost. But Charlie's escapades in the city have not gone unnoticed, and someone's been following Molly since she returned to London. And Ignatius is still reeling from a secret that Imogen long kept from him while she was alive. Something so shocking it resulted in her death, and his life being turned upside down. As bombs continue to beat down on the city, Charlie, Molly, and Ignatius learn that while the perils of war rage on, their coming together and trusting one another may be the only way for them to survive. It sounds decent. I definitely overlooked this one. Then another one I missed was The Lilac People by Milo Todd. This has a 4.35 star rating with 5,619 ratings. I had not heard of this one. It was not on my radar, but after reading the synopsis, now it is. In 1932 Berlin, Bertie, a trans man, and his friends spend carefree nights at the El Dorado Club, the epicenter of Berlin's thriving queer community. An employee of the renowned Dr. Magnus Hirschfeld at the Institute of Sexual Science, Bertie works to improve queer rights in Germany and beyond. But everything changes when Hitler rises to power. The Institute is raided, the El Dorado Club is shuttered, and queer people are rounded up. Bertie barely escapes with his girlfriend, Sophie, to a nearby farm. There, they take on the identities of an elderly couple and live for more than a decade in isolation. In the final days of war, with their freedom in sight, Bertie and Sophie find a young trans man collapsed on their property, still dressed in Holocaust prison clothes. They vow to protect him, not from the Nazis, but from the Allied forces who are arresting queer prisoners while liberating the rest of the country. Ironically, as the Allies' vice grips closes on Bertie and his family, their only salvation becomes fleeing to the United States. This sounds really good, and was apparently inspired by real events, which makes it that much more devastating to think about, but historically speaking for me, that usually makes for a great read. Then the last one that I missed was The First Witch of Boston by Andrea Catalano. This has a 4.15 star rating on Goodreads with 25,381 ratings. This was just an oops. This one was on my radar. I remember looking at it when I was making my nomination prediction, and I think I must have misread something because I swear it either had a lower rating or a lower number of ratings, because I thought I disqualified it for one of those reasons, but clearly that is just simply not true. So again, an oops on my part. Massachusetts Bay Colony, 1646. Thomas and Margaret Jones arrive from England to build a life in the New World. Though of different temperaments, cautious Thomas and fiery Margaret, a healer, are bound by love that has lasted decades. With a child on the way, their new beginning promises only blessings. But in this austere Puritan community, comely faces hide malicious intent. Wrong moves or words are met with suspicion, and Margaret's bold and unguarded nature draws scorn. Soon, Margaret is mistrusted as more cunning woman than kind caregiver, and when personal tragedies, religious hysterias, and wariness of the unknown turn most against her, even the devotion that Margaret and her husband share is at risk. This one is another one that is inspired by true events. In this case, it was diary entries. I love anything like Salem witchcraft trials. Technically, this isn't Salem, but around the same time period area. So definitely one that I want to read. So then the two books that were on my honorable mentions that did end up making it into the full nominees were The Secret Book Society by Madeline Martin. This has a 4.12 star rating and 5,013 ratings. This is one that I'm actually currently reading and liking. So I am happy to see that it is getting some attention. London, 1895. Trapped by oppressive marriages and societal expectations, three women receive a mysterious invitation to an afternoon tea at the home of the reclusive Lady Duxbury. Beneath the genteel facade of the gathering lies a secret book club, a sanctuary where they can discover freedom, sisterhood, and the courage to rewrite their stories. Eleanor Clark, a devoted mother, suffocating under the tyranny of her husband. Rose Wharton, a transplanted American dollar princess, struggling to fit the mold of an aristocratic wife. Lavinia Cavendish, an artistic young woman haunted by a dangerous family secret. All are drawn to the enigmatic Lady Duxbury, a thrice widowed countess whose husband's untimely deaths have sparked whispers of murder. As the women form deep, heartwarming friendships, they uncover secrets about their marriages, their past, and the risks they face. Their courage is their only weapon in the oppressive world that has kept them silent. But when secrets are deadly, one misstep could cost them everything. And the other is The Lost Story by Eva Fuentes. This has a 4.09 star rating with 1,261 ratings. I again had this on my honorable mentions, but I thought that would be way too low of number of ratings. But I have been seeing it around a bunch, so at the same time I'm not completely surprised. London, 2024, when American expat Margot Reynolds is hired to source a book that's more than 120 years old. She thinks that her greatest challenge is going to be that there's only one copy in existence. However, it quickly becomes clear that her client isn't the only one who is determined to procure the book at any cost. Thrust into a deadly quest, Margot teams up with an unlikely ally, the man she loved and lost, and is forced to confront the ghosts of her own past as the lingering feelings between them ignite. Havana, 1966. Pilar Castillo's days are spent working as a librarian in Havana. Her nights spent hoping for her husband's freedom after his unjust imprisonment. But Pilar has a secret that could jeopardize her life. She's fighting Fidel's regime in her own way. And when she comes into possession of a book that was published more than 60 years earlier, she must decide how much she's willing to risk to protect the literary works entrusted to her care. And then Boston, 1900, for Cuban teacher Eva Fuentes, traveling from Havana to Harvard to participate in the largest cultural exchange between Cuba and the United States, is not only a chance to represent her country at a critical time in its bid for independence, but also an opportunity to work on the book she's writing. When a moonlit encounter with an enigmatic stranger alters the course of Eva's summer at Harvard, and as secrets, lies, and forbidden love rise to the surface, Eva's life and legacy is irrevocably changed. Then, really quick before I dive into the 11 books that I got 100% correct, I did quickly want to mention the books that I thought would be nominated and were not. I won't dive into the synopses for them, but I'll just, again, briefly mention them. The Listeners by Maggie Stiefwater. This one was on the lower end for star rating and number of ratings, so I'm not completely surprised about that one not making it. The Queens of Crime by Marie Benedict was not nominated. I'm really surprised by The Women of Arlington Hall Fall by Jane Healy not being nominated. I haven't necessarily seen it around, but with a 4.29 star rating and 22,489 ratings, I still thought it would definitely be a contender. One Good Thing by Georgia Hunter was a no. The Story She Left Behind by Patty Callahan Henry was a no. Happy Land by Dolan Perkins Valdez, I was surprised to see was a no. And then not necessarily surprised, but disappointed because I read it and it was really good. Good Grief by Sarah Goodman Confino was also not nominated this year. Okay, so here are the 11 books that I predicted correctly in no particular order. Atmosphere by Taylor Jenkins Reid, no surprise there. I am predicting that this will win the Goodreads Choice Award in historical fiction. 5 stars for me, my favorite book of the year. Please read it. Joan Goodwin has been obsessed with the stars for as long as she can remember. Thoughtful and reserved, Joan is content with her life as a professor of physics and astronomy at Rice University and as an aunt to her precocious niece, Frances. That is until she comes across an advertisement seeking the first women scientists to join NASA's space shuttle program. Suddenly, Joan burns to be one of the first people to go to space. Selected from a pool of thousands of applicants in the summer of 1980, Joan begins training at Houston's Johnson Space Center alongside a group of exceptional candidates. Top Gun pilot Hank Redmond and scientist John Griffin, who are kind and easygoing even when the stakes are at their highest. Mission specialist Lydia Danes, who has worked too hard to play nice. Warm-hearted Donna Fitzgerald, who is navigating her own secrets. And Vanessa Ford, the magnetic and mysterious aeronautical engineer, who can fix any engine and fly any plane. As the new astronauts become unlikely friends and prepare for their first flights, Joan finds a passion and a love that she never imagined. In this new light, Joan begins to question everything she thinks she knows about her life in the observable universe. Then, in December of 1984, on mission STS-LR9, it all changes in an instant. Next, Broken Country by Clara Leslie Hall. Also, no surprises here. I still need to read this, but it is highly rated and reviewed. Beth and her gentle, kind husband Frank are happily married, but their happiness relies on the past staying buried. But when Beth's brother-in-law shoots a dog going after their sheep, Beth doesn't realize that the gunshot will alter the course of their lives. For the dog belonged to none other than Gabriel Wolfe, the man Beth loved as a teenager, the man who broke her heart years ago. Gabriel has returned to the village with his young son Leo, a boy who reminds Beth of her very own son, who died in a tragic accident. As Beth is pulled back into Gabriel's life, tensions around the village rise, and dangerous secrets and jealousies from the past resurface, this time with deadly consequences. Beth is forced to make a choice between the woman she once was and the woman she has become. Then The Stolen Life of Colette Marceau was nominated, another one that I still need to read but want to. Colette Marceau has been stealing jewels for as long as she can remember, following the centuries-old code of honor instilled in her by her mother Annabelle. Take only from the cruel and the unkind, and give to those in need. A little Robin Hood. Never was their family tradition more important than during the Second World War, when Annabelle and Colette worked side by side in Paris to fund the French resistance. But one night in 1942, it all went wrong. Annabelle was arrested by the Germans, and Colette's 4-year-old sister Lillian disappeared in the chaos of the raid, along with the exquisite diamond bracelet that was sewn into the hem of her nightgown for safekeeping. Soon after, Annabelle was executed, and Lillian's body was discovered floating in the Seine, but the bracelet was nowhere to be found. 70 years later, Colette, who has redistributed $30 million in jewels over the decades, has tried to leave behind her tragic past. But her life begins to unravel when the long missing bracelet turns up in an exhibit in Boston. If Colette can figure out where it has been all this time and who owns it now, she may finally learn the truth about what happened to her sister. But she isn't the only one for whom the bracelet holds answers. And when someone from her childhood lays claim to the diamonds, she's forced to confront the ghosts of her past as never before. Definitely looking forward to reading this one. Next up, Isola by Allegra Goodman. Heir to a fortune, Marguerite is destined for a life of prosperity and gentility. Then she's orphaned, and her guardian, an enigmatic and volatile man, spends her inheritance and insists she accompany him on an expedition to New France. Isolated and afraid, Marguerite befriends her guardian's servant, and the two develop an intense attraction. But when their relationship is discovered, they are brutally punished and abandoned on a small island with no hope for rescue. Once a child of privilege who dressed in gowns and laced pearls in her hair, Marguerite finds herself at the mercy of nature. As the weather turns, blanketing the island in ice, she discovers a faith she never before needed. The Stolen Queen by Fiona Davis. Egypt, 1936. When anthropology student Charlotte Cross is offered a coveted spot on an archaeological dig in Egypt's Valley of the Kings, she leaps at the opportunity. But after an unbearable tragedy strikes, Charlotte knows her future will never be the same. New York City, 1978. 18-year-old Annie Jenkins is thrilled when she lands an opportunity to work for iconic former Vogue fashion editor Diana Vreeland, who's in the midst of organizing the famous Met Gala, hosted at the museum and known across the city as the Party of the Year. Though Annie soon realizes she'll have her work cut out for her, scrambling to meet Diana's capricious demands and exacting standards. Meanwhile, Charlotte, now leading a quiet life as the associate curator of the Met's celebrated Department of Egyptian Art, wants little to do with the upcoming gala. She's consumed with her research on Hathakari, a rare female pharaoh dismissed by most other Egyptologists as unimportant. That is until the night of the gala, when one of the Egyptian art collector's most valuable artifacts goes missing, and there are signs that Hathakari's legendary curse might be reawakening. As Annie and Charlotte team up to search for the missing antiquity, a desperate hunch leads the unlikely duo to one place Charlotte swore she'd never return: Egypt. But if they're to have any hope of finding the artifact, Charlotte will need to confront the demons of her past, which may mean leading them both directly into danger. Homeseeking by Carissa Chen. Hai Wen is buying bananas at 99 Ranch Market in Los Angeles when he looks up and sees Suki, his Suki, for the first time in 60 years. To recently widowed Hai Wen, it feels like a second chance. But Suki has only survived by refusing to look back. Suki was 7 when she first met Hai Wen in their Shanghai neighborhood. Drawn by the sound of his violin, their childhood friendship blossomed into soul-deep love. But when Hai Wen secretly enlisted in the Nationalist Army in 1947 to save his brother from the draft, she was left with just his violin and a note: "Forgive me." Homeseeking follows the separated lovers through 6 decades of tumultuous Chinese history as war, famine, and opportunity take them separately to the song halls of Hong Kong, the military encampments of Taiwan, the bustling streets of New York, and sunny California, telling Hai Wen's story from the present to the past, while tracing Suki's story from her childhood to the present, meeting in the crucible of their lives. Throughout, Hai Wen holds his memories close, while Suki forces herself to look only forward, neither losing sight of the home they hold in their heart. What Kind of Paradise by Janelle Brown. Growing up in an isolated cabin in Montana in the mid-1990s, Jane knows only the world that she and her father live: the wood stove that heats their home, the vegetable garden where they try to eke out a subsistence existence, the books of 19th century philosophy that her father gives her to read in lieu of going to school. Her father is elusive about their pasts, giving Jane little beyond the facts that they once lived in the Bay Area and that her mother died in a car accident, the crash propelling him to move Jane off the grid to raise her in a Thoreau-like utopia. As Jane becomes a teenager, she starts pushing against the boundaries of her restricted world. She begs to accompany her father on his occasional trips away from the cabin, but when Jane realizes that her devotion to her father has made her an accomplice to a horrific crime, she flees Montana to the only place she knows to look for answers about her mysterious past and her mother's, San Francisco. It is a city in the midst of a seismic change where her quest to understand herself will force her to reckon with both the possibilities and the perils of the fledgling internet, and where she will come to question everything she values. Good Dirt by Charmaine Wilkerson. When 10-year-old Abby Friedman heard the gunshot, time stopped. And when she saw her brother Baz lying on the floor, surrounded by the shattered pieces of a centuries-old jar, life as Abby knew it shattered as well. The crime was never solved, and because the Friedmans were one of the only Black families in a particularly well-to-do enclave of New England, the case has had an enduring voyeuristic pull for the public. The last thing the Friedmans want is another media frenzy splashing their family across the papers, but when Abby's high-profile romance falls apart without any explanation, that's exactly what they get. So Abby flees to France, only for her past to follow her there. And as she tries to process what has happened, she begins to think about the other loss her family suffered on that day 18 years ago. The stoneware jar that has been in their family for generations, brought north by an enslaved ancestor. But little does she know that handcrafted piece of pottery held more than just her family's history. It might also hold the key to unlocking her own future. Junie by Aaron Crosby Eckstein. 16 years old and enslaved since she was born, Junie has spent her life on Bellarine Plantation in Alabama, cooking, cleaning alongside her family, and tending to the white master's daughter Violet. Her daydreams are filled with poetry and faraway worlds, while she spends her nights secretly roaming through the forest, consumed with grief over the sudden death of her older sister Minnie. When wealthy guests arrive from New Orleans, hinting at marriage for Violet and upending Junie's life, she commits a desperate act, one that rouses Minnie's spirit from the grave, tethered to this world unless Junie can free her. She enlists the aid of Caleb, the guest's coachman, and their friendship soon becomes something more. Yet as long-held truths begin to crumble, she realizes Bellarine is harboring dark and horrifying secrets that can no longer be ignored. With time ticking down, Junie begins to push against the harsh current that has controlled her entire life. As she grapples with an increasingly unfamiliar world in which she has little control, she is forced to ask herself, when we choose love and liberation, what must we leave behind? Buckeye by Patrick Ryan. In Bonomi, Ohio, a stolen moment of passion sparked in the exuberant aftermath of the Allied victory in Europe binds Cal Jenkins, a man wounded not in war but by his inability to fight in it, to Margaret Salt, a woman trying to obscure her past. Cal's wife Becky has a spiritual gift. She is a seer who can conjure the dead, helping families connect with those they've lost. Margaret's husband Felix is serving on a Navy cargo ship out of harm's way until a telegram suggests that the unthinkable might have happened. Later, as the country reconstructs in the post-war boom, a secret grows in Bonomi, but nothing stays buried forever in a small town. Against the backdrop of some of the most transformative decades in modern America, the consequences of that long-ago encounter ripple through the next generations of both families, compelling them to re-examine who they thought they were and what the future might hold. And last but not least, the Book Club for Troublesome Women by Marie Bostwick. By early 1960s standards, Margaret Ryan, Viv Buscetti, and Bitsy Cobb, suburban housewives in a brand new planned community in Northern Virginia, appear to have it all. The fact that all doesn't feel like enough leaves them feeling confused and guilty, certain the fault must lie with them. Things begin to change when they form a book club with Charlotte Gustafson, the eccentric and artsy new neighbor from Manhattan, and read Betty Friedan's just-released book, The Feminine Mystique. Controversial and groundbreaking, the book struck a chord with an entire generation of women, helping them realize that they weren't alone in their dissatisfactions or their longings, lifting their eyes to new horizons of possibilities and achievement. achievement. Margaret, Charlotte, Bitsy, and Viv are among them, but is it really the book that alters the lives of these 4 very different women? Or is it the bond of sisterhood that helps them find courage to confront the past, navigate turmoil in a rapidly changing world, and see themselves in a new and limitless light? And just for fun, I am going to predict the top 10 books that I think will be nominated in the order that I think they'll be nominated. So that will be Atmosphere number 1, Broken Country number 2, Isola number 3, The Bright Years number 4, Good Dirt number 5, The Book Club for Troublesome Women number 6, Strangers in Time number 7, What Kind of Paradise number 8, The Stolen Life of Colette Marceau number 9, and Homeseeking number 10. I will have one more Goodreads Choice Awards related video, but there will be a little bit of a break. Over on my Instagram, I had my followers vote out of all of the nominees, excluding Atmosphere and The Secret Book Society, since I have read or currently reading those, which one would they like to see me read and vlog. I will share the full breakdown of how the voting and the results went in that video, but to give you a little sneak peek, the book that was chosen for me to read and vlog was Broken Country by Claire Leslie Hall. This one has already been on my TBR this year. I already own it, so wins all around. I've heard great things. I'm very excited to read it. So I will vlog this, and when I'm done reading, hopefully sometime in December, I will be able to get that last video out with all my thoughts about this book and if my top 10 predictions were correct. The winner is announced on Goodreads usually in early December, so I think the timing should work out pretty well. And of course, I'll also share who Atmosphere ended up winning the Goodreads Choice Awards in historical fiction. That's it for this video. Let me know in the comments what you thought of the nominees this year, and if you are not feeling super chatty, but you just wanted to let me know that you were here, go ahead and leave me a trophy emoji for the Goodreads Choice Awards, and I will see you on my next video. Bye!